I'm Ted Shirley, ex-British Army sniper and author of Afghanistan Sniper, Trauma on the Front Line and Beyond. I remember just before we were deploying on our second tour to Afghanistan, I remember getting a phone call off one of the other sniper lads. And it turned out that one of our brothers from the course had been killed before we'd deployed. And I remember walking into my parents' house and seeing his face just filling the news. Like his whole head was there, and for that moment, that was the very first moment, it felt real. I'd been to war before, but this time that made it personal. And I think that was also part of the demise that's later to come with my mental health, was I made it personal. That was a bit of a mistake, but in hindsight, I'm a human being. Once we'd deployed to Afghanistan, the jobs were thick and fast, and it was a very rapid sort of deployment after deployment onto various objectives. Starting out in a mobile reconnaissance force in Jackal vehicles, we would dash out into the desert, do jobs, and dash back into the middle of nowhere and disappear for the night. And as these sort of jobs progressed and as the summer months began to come in, the tour became more kinetic. And as it did that, thoughts of friends who'd been injured and killed before we'd even arrived there started to really take over my mind. And this is where the view that I had through a scope wasn't just a sniper and his target, it was a sniper and the people that were responsible for the death of his friend. And as we carried that with us, the whole sniper platoon, as few of us as there were, we grew in more ways than we expected. We became callous and we became hungry for the worst of humanity, and we thrived upon it. It was just before the sun had started to dip a little bit south of a town called Nadi Ali, and it came over the radio that one of the teams that were further north had come into contact, shoot and scoot kind of situation. A few rounds popped off and then the Taliban had disappeared, but they had an idea that they could have possibly moved towards our direction. So typically, I jumped on the roof. At first, there wasn't a lot to see. The distance between me and the potential location of where the insurgents were extracting to was a mile away, with nothing but open field. There wasn't too much vegetation, there was nowhere really for them to hide. And just as the world started to turn orange from the sun dipping, I could see three blokes walking in the distance. I could see their AK-47s down by the side easily, and I knew these were the guys that had just tried to kill my mates. So I steadied myself and began to enter what I talk a lot about in the book, called my bubble. It was a zone of absolute peace, as if I was a sleeping baby. My heart rate would be low, my breathing was slow. Nothing distracted me. I had absolute trust in the lads around me to keep me safe. Although 9 times out of 10 I was in the most precarious of situations, with rounds pinging inches past my head and being mostly the #1 target for Taliban fire. As I could see the three blokes moving in the far distance, I decided that, right, if a shot's going to happen, this is going to be a difficult one. So I need to switch on here and start doing some calculations. And I figured out that there was 3 different directions of wind between me and my intended targets. Took 11 calculations in the end to figure out just exactly where I'd be able to place this round where I wanted it. And with that, I then switched into, I'd say, predator mode. They were oblivious as to my location or my watching them. After a short time, I could tell that The bloke in the centre seemed to be commanding the other two. He seemed to be in charge and they were under his orders. So I devised a plan. The distance from me and them was a mile. And so me pulling the trigger, they wouldn't have heard that until it was too late. So my plan was take out the one at the rear, take out the one at the front, and then take out the commander in the centre. Obviously at a distance of a mile, the turrets of the scope that were on my weapon were maximised and I had to aim off, so I physically wasn't looking at the target. I took him where they were, moved to the relevant area, flicked off my safety catch and sent the round flying. Very quickly, after the dust had separated from my eyelids, I was able to see that my round had missed. I was furious, but also instantly knew exactly what I needed to do. A few more clicks to the right and it was good night. The first round folded the rear Taliban fighter in half. As I reloaded my weapon and settled back to take the next shot, I could see that the front and centre insurgents were both looking round to see their now dead friend on the floor. Just as this realisation came in, I let loose my other round, taking out the front of their mini patrol, leaving just their commander. The feeling of squeezing a trigger and ending a life was one that had many dimensions to it and was something that stuck with me for a very, very long time. The third insurgent then began to run, and with that, I sent my third round. Once the inevitable had happened, a crackle came over the radio, and there was an American Apache pilot in the skies at the time who'd witnessed it all and seen the shooting, and he complimented me on my ability, which was nice. But after that, everything had changed. My internal monologue became that of evil and darkness that very, very quickly consumed me. Coming home after being in such a volatile state of mind and part of the world, that transition between being the monster that keeps monsters at bay and keeps them away from your front door to being the idiot stood naked on a pub table a few days after returning from tour. Very, very hard tightrope line to walk. Being judged on your actions, being praised when the public are on side, and then almost the deflation of that hero to zero feeling, where all I wanted to do after returning from war was get back on that battlefield, and my PTSD had really taken a hold of me quickly after returning. And I go very much into detail about how it did that in the book. Yeah, the brotherhood bond between, especially us as snipers, was incredible. It was unbreakable. We used to get into all sorts of mischief, as you can imagine. And that was a big part of leaving the military. I was medically discharged myself personally, so it was a bit of an abrupt end to my career, but that brotherhood is definitely something that's going to last a lifetime. It's always the number one call to sort of turn your bad mindset into a good one by ringing someone that you've been through the worst case scenario with. It's always going to improve. And some of these stories, I could tell you stories about us running around in our underpants and flip-flops getting shot at by Taliban, or whitewater rafting in Kenya with bloody crocodiles and all sorts of stuff. The stories are never ending, and in the book you'll read a lot of them, and there's some funny moments throughout those sort of 10 years. of my recovery and a lot of other people's recoveries as well. The reason I wrote Afghanistan Sniper was for multiple reasons. I'd struggled for over a decade with my own PTSD, which resulted in me attempting suicide on numerous occasions. As I was going through my own journey, I realised that a lot of the people around me were going through that very same journey. I initially tried as much as I could to help those around me, but it had a detrimental effect on my own mental health, creating this world of chaos that didn't need to be there. So my idea was to write Trauma on the Front Line and Beyond and give an insight, almost like a fly on the wall insight, to a 10 to 12 year journey from becoming a sniper, doing my job in Afghanistan and then coming home, and how I battled those demons.